The scent hit me first. Not the familiar, earthy musk of pines and soil that marked my homeland, but something sharper, wintergreen and stone, with an undercurrent of power that made my skin prickle. We had crossed into Silvercrest territory an hour ago, but only now did the full weight of my situation crash over me like ice water. I sat stiffly in the back of the SUV, my wrists bound by silver-lined rope that burned against my skin. The rope was ceremonial, more symbolic than functional. A reminder that I was property being transferred, not a person with choices. Through the tinted windows, jagged mountains loomed against a bruised twilight sky, their peaks lost in low-hanging clouds. A storm was brewing, both outside and within me. "Almost there, little wolf," Jarek said. My former pack's beta. His voice carried a false kindness that made my stomach twist. "Try to look presentable. These Silvercrest wolves aren't as forgiving as we've been." Forgiving. The word echoed hollowly in my chest. The Ridge Run pack had never forgiven me for being what I was, weak according to them. Different. An outcast. The daughter of a once respected family reduced to serving others after my parents' mysterious disappearance 3 years ago. They tolerated me because of my healing abilities, a rare gift even among our kind. But tolerance had its limits as resources grew scarce. My fingers found the small pendant hidden beneath my worn sweater, a teardrop-shaped moonstone wrapped in silver wire that had belonged to my mother. Remember Rhea? She'd whispered the night before she disappeared. "Still waters run deep. Your strength isn't in your claws or teeth." But here, she'd touched my heart, then my temple. It was the last thing she'd ever said to me. I said, "Fix yourself." Jarek snapped, jolting me out of the memory. "Your hair's a mess." I awkwardly lifted my bound hands, tucking strands of pale blonde hair behind my ears. My hair had always been too light, almost white in certain light. Another mark of my difference in a pack of predominantly dark-haired wolves. The vehicle slowed as we approached a massive iron gate embedded in stone. Guards with rifles, both modern and ancient, stood at attention. Beyond the gate, partially obscured by towering pines, rose a sprawling compound. Part fortress, part modern estate, the notorious heart of Silvercrest territory. "Remember the terms," Jarek murmured as our driver lowered his window. "You belong to them now. Try to be useful enough that they keep you alive. Healing, cooking, cleaning, whatever they want. Don't mention Ridge Run. You're nothing to us anymore." The words weren't new, but they stung all the same. I had been informed of my fate only yesterday. Traded to settle a territorial debt along with hunting rights to the eastern forest and 2 crates of medical supplies. My value had been itemized alongside antibiotics and gauze. "Ridge Run delivering as promised," our driver announced to the guards, "1 Omega female untouched with healing abilities." I flinched at the clinical description, untouched, as if my lack of intimate experience was a selling point. Among our kind, it often was. The guard approached, his face unreadable as he bent to look through the window. His eyes swept over me, calculating, evaluating, not as a person, but as a commodity. "Pull forward to the main house, they're waiting." As the gate creaked open, ominously, a chill crept down my spine, one that had nothing to do with the evening air. I'd heard stories about Silvercrest, about their ruthless alpha king who had united 3 warring packs through blood and will, alone Cale Vance. Even his name was spoken in whispers among my former pack. The SUV crawled up the winding driveway, gravel crunching beneath its tires. I caught glimpses of movement in the woods, sentries no doubt monitoring our approach. The compound grew larger with each turn, stone and glass blending with the mountainside as if the fortress had grown organically from the earth itself. "Value yourself appropriately," Jarek continued, his voice lower now, almost urgent. "Not too high or they'll think you insolent. Not too low or they'll think you worthless. Find a middle ground and survive." It was the closest thing to kindness he'd shown me in years, this rough advice for survival. I briefly wondered if Dorian had caught up with him, if trading a packmate, even one as insignificant as me, weighed on his conscience. The thought vanished as quickly as it had come. Wolves like Jarek didn't waste energy on Dorian. The vehicle came to a halt in front of a wide stone staircase that led up to massive double doors. Guards stood on either side of the entrance, their stances alert, despite the ceremonial nature of this exchange. This wasn't a battle or a skirmish, it was a transaction. But the tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to make it hard to breathe. "Out," Jarek ordered, not sparing me a glance as he exited the vehicle. My hands trembled as I fumbled with the door handle, the silver-lined rope cutting into my skin and making even the simplest tasks difficult. Before I could manage it, the door was wrenched open by one of the Silvercrest guards, a tall woman with a scar running down her cheekbone. "Move," she said, her voice sharp, neither kind nor cruel, just efficient. I stepped out on shaky legs, the cold mountain air stinging my lungs. The sky darkened further, and the first heavy raindrops began to fall, splattering against the stone steps and my upturned face, the weather a fitting metaphor for a funeral. I thought grimly. In many ways, Rhea Storm of Ridge Run Pack had died today. Who I would become tomorrow was still uncertain. The doors to the entrance swung open, spilling warm light onto the wet stone. A figure stood, silhouetted against the brightness, tall and imposing. Not Cale Vance, but a man older than him, with silver streaking through his dark hair and beard. "Reich," Jarek acknowledged, straightening his posture. "We've fulfilled our end." And Reich descended the stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving me. There was something in his gaze I couldn't fully read. Curiosity maybe, or suspicion. "I see," he replied, his voice deep and measured. "Remove her bindings. We don't treat gifts like prisoners here." Jarek hesitated, then motioned to one of the escorts. The rope fell away, leaving raw red marks around my wrists. I resisted the urge to rub them, keeping my arms at my sides and my eyes down as I'd been told. Submission meant survival. "Look at me," Reich commanded. I raised my eyes slowly, meeting his gaze. Something flickered in his expression, surprise quickly masked. "Your name?" he asked. "Rhea." I answered, my voice embarrassingly small. "Speak up, girl." I swallowed hard. "Rhea Storm." Reich circled me slowly, his eyes scanning me like a piece of livestock. I stood perfectly still, the rain soaking through my thin sweater and plastering my hair to my face. I knew what he saw. A slender, pale woman, barely in her 20s. Unremarkable save for the light hair and eyes my mother had always called storm cloud gray. Nothing threatening, nothing valuable beyond my healing abilities. "She's experienced," Reich said to Jarek, his tone skeptical. "She's a healer." "She is," Jarek confirmed. "Trained by her mother, who was our pack's head healer before her." Reich's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't press the matter further. And her shifting full transformation. A flush of shame heated my cheeks despite the cold rain. This was the crux of my worthlessness in Ridge Run, my inability to fully transform. I could partially shift, gaining enhanced strength, speed, and senses, but the complete wolf form eluded me. Another failure. Another difference that marked me as less. "Partial only," Jarek admitted, "but her healing compensates." Reich made a non-committal sound and turned toward the doors. "We accept the delivery. The eastern hunting grounds are yours until the winter solstice, as agreed." He gestured toward me. "Come." Jarek didn't say goodbye or offer any parting words. He simply turned and walked back to the vehicle, his duty discharged. The finality of it took my breath away. It was done. I was no longer Ridge Run. I was property, a bargaining chip, a debt paid. "Inside," Reich said. His tone softened slightly. "The Alpha King will want to see what he's acquired." I followed him up the stairs, my legs moving mechanically. The warmth of the interior hit me like a physical force after the cold outside. The entrance hall soared upwards, stone and wood blending with understated wealth. Pack members moved purposefully through connecting corridors, some pausing to stare at the newcomer, at me, with undisguised curiosity or suspicion. "Wait here," Reich instructed, gesturing to a bench near a massive fireplace. "Dry yourself. I'll inform the Alpha King of your arrival." Left alone, I sank onto the bench, exhaustion crashing over me in waves. The heat from the fire began to seep into my bones, reminding me of how cold I had been. How cold I had been for years since losing my parents and my place in the pack hierarchy. Voices echoed from nearby rooms, conversations, laughter, the familiar sounds of pack life. Silvercrest was bigger than Ridge Run. Its territory stretched farther, its resources richer. For a fleeting moment, I thought with desperate hope that I might find a corner here where I could simply exist in peace. A place where my skills could serve a purpose beyond survival. The moonstone pendant against my chest felt heavier, a constant reminder of my mother's final words. "Still, waters run deep." I wondered what she would think of me now traded away like livestock. Would she be ashamed of my submission, or would she understand it as a necessary act of survival? My thoughts scattered as footsteps drew near, multiple sets moving with purpose. I quickly rose from the bench, smoothing my damp clothes the best I could. First impressions mattered more than ever now. Reich reappeared, his expression unreadable. Behind him were two others, a woman with sharp features and calculating eyes, and a younger man whose easy grace didn't quite hide the predator within. But it was the man who entered last that stole the breath from my lungs. He moved like darkness itself, fluid, inevitable. Taller than the rest, with shoulders that strained against his simple black Henley. He carried power like others carry their clothes, an inherent part of him. His hair was as black as midnight, cropped short on the sides, longer on top. His features were carved from stone, as if sculpted by an artist obsessed with creating the perfect balance of beauty and danger. Kyle Vance, the Alpha King. His eyes locked with mine across the room, startling amber eyes that appeared almost golden in the firelight. Something electric passed between us, a jolt of recognition that made no sense. The pendant against my skin suddenly burned and I gasped. Breaking the connection, I pressed my hand to my chest in confusion. When I looked up again, the Alpha King's expression had shifted from mild curiosity to intense focus. He crossed the room with long strides, closing the distance between us until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I smelled the scent that had teased my senses since crossing the border wintergreen stone, but also something wilder, something that called to a part of me I barely understood. "You," he said. His voice was a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through my bones. "Who are you, really?" Before I could answer, the woman behind him stepped forward. "Kyle. She's just the Omega from Ridge Run, the healer." But he didn't look at her. His gaze never wavered from mine. He was searching my face as though trying to decipher something hidden there, a language only he could read. "Your name," he demanded again. "Rhea Storm." I whispered, my voice small and shaky, unable to speak louder with him, standing so close, the strange energy still crackling between us. His jaw tightened, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Storm," he repeated. The name seemed to carry a deeper meaning. He reached out suddenly, his movement so swift that I had no time to react. His fingers brushed the chain at my neck, finding the pendant that had inexplicably heated at his touch. The moment his skin touched the moonstone, he let out a sound, a mix between human and wolf. A recognition. A claim. Reich murmured from behind him. The Alpha King's eyes blazed their amber depths, capturing the firelight and turning it into something molten. "Everyone out," Kyle Vance ordered. His voice brooked no argument. Even the woman who had been ready to protest retreated after a moment's hesitation. We were alone in the vast entrance hall. The crackle of flames was the only sound beyond our steady breathing. "They told me you were just a simple Omega," he said finally, his voice laced with barely controlled fury that made my heart skip a beat. "A healer with no proper shifting ability, expendable enough to be traded for hunting rights." I swallowed hard, struggling to keep my composure. "That's what I am," I murmured. His laugh came out, cold, void of humor. "No, little wolf. That's what they wanted you to believe." His fingers lingered on the moonstone pendant, his thumb brushing across it with an unsettling intimacy. "This was your mother's." It wasn't a question. "Yes," I responded, confusion swirling inside me. "How did you—" "Because I gave it to her." He cut me off his words, striking like a physical blow. "For safekeeping. For her daughter when the time came." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What are you saying?" His expression softened slightly, a flicker of something close to wonder, breaking through the anger. "I'm saying, Rhea Storm, that Ridge Run didn't just trade away an Omega healer today." His hand released the pendant and moved to gently trace my cheek. "They unwittingly handed me my fated mate." The world seemed to collapse into a single moment. His hand, warm and electric, pressed against my cheek. Fated mate. And the words echoed in my mind, foreign and incomprehensible. Wolves spoke of such bonds, connections, destined by forces beyond understanding, rare and almost mythical. Something that happened to important wolves. Alphas. Leaders. Not to me. I stepped back, breaking the contact, my heart racing. "There's been a mistake," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm nobody." Kyle's eyes narrowed as he followed my movement. "Is that what they taught you to believe?" He didn't move closer, but his presence filled the space between us, as if pushing against me. "That you're nothing." The question struck too deep, too close to years of quiet degradation, of being reminded every day that I was tolerated but not valued. I couldn't hold his gaze, looking away. "Your silence answers for you," he said softly. "Tell me about your parents." The sudden shift in topic caught me off guard. "They disappeared 3 years ago," I said, my voice strained. "A hunting trip that never returned. And before that—" He paused, his voice gentle but pressing. "My mother was the pack healer. My father was—" I faltered, memories shifting uncomfortably in my mind. "He advised our alpha," I continued, unsure. "He became distant, secretive." Cale nodded as if confirming something to himself. "Eleanor and Elias Bennett weren't just pack members," he said. "They were envoys, diplomats between Ridge Run and Silvercrest during the last peace talks." His jaw tightened. "Until Ridge Run's alpha decided peace was less profitable than conflict." The ground beneath me seemed to disappear. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your parents didn't disappear," he replied, his voice low and steady. "They were eliminated for advocating cooperation instead of war." He watched me closely, gauging my reaction. "And you, Rhea, were deliberately kept in the dark about your heritage and potential." The pendant felt suddenly heavier against my chest. Still waters run deep. Was this what my mother had meant? That beneath the surface I carried something others feared? "Why?" I finally managed to ask, my voice shaking. "Because a true mate bond to the Alpha King of Silvercrest would have made you untouchable." His voice lowered, his words slicing through the air. "Your very existence threatened everything they wanted to build." Thunder rumbled outside, echoing the storm inside me. This was too much. This stranger claiming to know more about my life, my parents, and even my very soul had told me everything I thought I knew was a lie. "It's too convenient," I said, my chest tightening. "I'm suddenly valuable after being treated as worthless all these years." Cale's expression didn't soften. "This is absurd," I whispered, my hands trembling. I wrapped my arms around myself, the weight of his words sinking in. "You don't even know me," I said softly. the words feeling like an echo in the room. A smile touched his lips. Not warm, not cruel either. The mate bond doesn't care about familiarity, Ria. He gestured to the pendant around my neck. That stone reacts to my presence. Because it was carved from the sacred pools in the heart of Silvercrest territory, it's attuned to the bloodline that rules here. As if on cue, the stone warmed against my skin again. Kyle's voice softened, his tone taking on a more contemplative edge. Your mother knew, he continued. That's why she gave you the pendant. Protection and proof in one. She was preparing you, in her way. A memory surfaced, sudden and vivid. I saw my mother teaching me how to heal a wounded fox, her hands guiding mine over the animal's broken leg. Her soft voice echoed in my mind. Connection flows both ways. She had always said, to heal another is to recognize that their pain could be your pain. Their strength, your strength. Had she known then that this was more than healing, more than simple connection? The massive doors behind us creaked open, pulling me from the memory. Reich entered, his expression serious. Forgive the intrusion, he said, but Ridge Run's representatives are departing. They're asking for confirmation that the exchange is satisfactory. Kael's face darkened, his jaw tightening. Satisfactory, he repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. Tell them their debt is considered paid. For now. The ominous weight of his words hung in the air as Reich nodded and retreated. Once we were alone again, Kael's focus shifted back to me. You need rest, food, dry clothes, he said, his tone now practical, though the intensity in his eyes remained. We have much to discuss, but that can wait until morning. The sudden shift to the mundane, my physical comfort, was almost more disorienting than the weight of his claims. Part of me wanted answers immediately, to understand what was happening to my life. But another part, the part that had survived by adapting, by retreating when necessary, recognized the wisdom in taking space to process. Thank you, I said simply. He nodded once, then reached for a small bell on a nearby table. Its clear tone summoned a young woman almost instantly. She wasn't a servant, I noted immediately. There was an air of confidence about her, like someone accustomed to being called upon. Selakael addressed her, his voice soft yet commanding. This is Ria Storm. She'll be staying in the East Wing. See that she has everything she needs. Sela regarded me with curiosity. Her eyes warm but neutral, no hostility. Of course, she said, her smile brief but genuine. If you'll follow me. Before I could move, Kael spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of a final instruction. Ria. My name spoken in his voice sent an involuntary shiver through me. Nothing is as it seems. Trust no one's version of you but your own. With those cryptic words, he turned and strode from the room, leaving me more confused than ever. Sela led me through the maze of corridors. The grandeur of the main hall gave way to more lived-in spaces, warm and inviting. Pack members nodded respectfully as we passed. Their eyes lingered on me with curious glances. News of the Omega traded from Ridge Run, no doubt traveling fast. Finally, Sela stopped before a heavy wooden door. This will be your room, she said, pushing it open. The space inside was larger than any room I had ever had to myself. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall. Windows stretched along another, offering a view of the mountains now cloaked in stormy darkness. A fire burned in a small hearth, crackling and warming the space. I stepped inside, feeling the weight of the journey, the uncertainty and the strange sense of new beginnings. Shadows danced across the room, casting a warm glow over the cozy furnishings. The bathroom is through there. Sela gestured to a door on the right. I've put some clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you. They're mine, but we seem about the same size. I turned to her, taken aback by this kindness from a stranger. Thank you, but why am I in the East Wing? Isn't this where? I trailed off, unsure how to word my confusion. Sela's eyes sparkled with amusement. Where the pack leadership stays. Yes. Did you expect to be housed in servants' quarters? Her expression softened as she noticed my confusion. Whatever you were in Ridge Run, you're under the Alpha King's protection now. Distant, she moved toward the wardrobe, pulling out a soft sweater and leggings. I'll have food brought up. You should shower and change. Sela, I said, stopping her before she could leave. What do you know about fated mates? Her eyebrows rose, though she didn't seem shocked by my question. Only what everyone knows. They're rare, powerful. A true mate bond can't be broken or denied, only delayed. She studied me curiously. Why do you ask? I absently touched the pendant at my neck. Just something I've heard mentioned. She nodded, but her eyes held an unspoken question, like she suspected there was more to my inquiry. Rest, Ria. Tomorrow will come, soon enough. Left alone, I moved like I was in a dream. The day's events weighed heavy and exhaustion seeped into my bones. The bathroom was luxurious by my standards, large enough for 3 people, filled with scents of herbs and mountain air. I stood under the hot water, letting the warmth wash away the journey, the rope burns on my wrists and the lingering scent of Ridge Run. Clean and dressed in the clothes Sela provided, I returned to find a tray of food, waiting simple, yet more than I had expected. Warm bread, fresh from the oven. A hearty stew, rich with meat and vegetables, even a small pot of honey for sweetening the tea beside it. I ate slowly at first, but the flavors exploded on my tongue and my appreciation grew with every bite. As I ate, I tried to make sense of everything that had happened. My parents' diplomats, not just pack members. Their disappearance. A deliberate elimination, if Kael was to be believed. The most outlandish claim of all, Iria Storm, an Omega, who couldn't even fully shift, was the fated mate of the most powerful Alpha in the region. It seemed impossible. Perhaps it was a convenient lie to justify keeping a potentially useful healer. But then, the way the pendant had heated at Kael's approach, the electric recognition that passed between us, the fact that he knew my mother had given me this exact necklace, none of it felt like a lie. I moved toward the window, watching lightning crack across the jagged peaks of the mountains. This place felt strangely familiar, even though I had never been here before. The scent of the air, the rhythm of the rain against the glass, something about it all spoke to a part of me I didn't even know existed. Trust no one's version of you but your own. Kael's words echoed in my mind. But what was my version? Who was I, if not the person I had been raised to believe I was? The questions churned inside me as exhaustion claimed me. I curled up on the bed, too soft, too large, too unfamiliar, and surrendered to sleep. I dreamed of running through moonlit forests, faster and freer than I had ever been in my waking life. In the dream, my transformation was effortless, limbs lengthening, senses sharpening, shifting until I ran on 4 legs instead of 2. Beside me, a shadow ran larger and darker than my own pale form, keeping pace with ease and power. We were hunting something, or perhaps we were being hunted. The distinction blurred as we moved in perfect harmony through the trees. I woke with a gasp as the first light of dawn crept through the windows. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The room was too grand, the bed too comfortable. Then yesterday's events flooded back and I sat up, brushing tangled hair from my face. A soft knock at the door made me tense. Ria, Sela called through the door. Are you awake? The Alpha King has requested your presence at breakfast. Not a request, it was a summons. I understood that instinctively. I dressed quickly in the clothes Sela had provided, a simple blue sweater and dark jeans that fit better than anything I had worn in years. My old clothes lay discarded, and I considered leaving them behind. But something made me retrieve my mother's pendant and fasten it around my neck where it settled like a familiar weight. Sela was waiting for me in the corridor, her expression brightening when she saw me. You look better, she observed. Sleep helps. I managed a small smile, though my stomach churned with nerves. Where are we going? I asked. Private dining room, she answered, leading me through the hallways, which were already busy with morning activity. Pack members nodded respectfully to Sela as we passed. Some openly stared at me. Others pretended not to notice the newcomer in their midst. I kept my eyes lowered, old habits of submission hard to break. Stop that, Sela said suddenly, her voice gentle but firm. Her voice was soft but firm. You're not in Ridge Run anymore. Silvercrest doesn't expect Omegas to act like they're invisible. I looked up startled. What does Silvercrest expect? Something like approval flickered in her eyes. That everyone contributes according to their abilities. That pack means family, not a hierarchy of worth. She paused in front of a beautifully carved door. Dominic rebuilt this pack from the ashes of 3 warring territories. He doesn't tolerate the old ways of treating Omegas as lesser. Before I could process her words, she knocked and then pushed the door open without waiting for a response. The room beyond was smaller than I expected, intimate rather than grand. Windows overlooked a mist-covered garden, and a fire crackled in a stone hearth. A round table dominated the room, laden with plates and steaming dishes that made my stomach growl despite the anxiety curling in my chest. Kyle sat with his back to the door, but as we entered, he stood turning with the fluid grace of someone who was both imposing and surprisingly agile for his size. In daylight, he was no less intimidating, but now I could see details I had missed in the firelit hall. Fine lines at the corners of his eyes, a small scar that ran through one eyebrow, the way his Henley stretched over shoulders built for strength. Rhea, he said. My name sounded different in his voice, significant. You slept well? He asked, his gaze steady. Yes. I answered, surprising myself with the truth. Despite everything, I had slept more deeply than I had in months. Thank you for the room. It's more than I expected. I said, though something in his expression darkened at my words. Your expectations need adjusting. He gestured toward the table. Join me. Maya, thank you, I said, and she gave my arm a reassuring squeeze before leaving, closing the door behind her. Alone with him, the room suddenly felt much smaller. I moved to the table and took the seat opposite him. He remained standing until I was settled, a courtesy I hadn't anticipated. Tea, he asked, lifting a pot. At my nod, he poured the simple domestic gesture, seeming at odds with the power that radiated from him. Eat, he added, gesturing to the spread. We have much to discuss. I served myself small portions of eggs and fruit, acutely aware of his eyes on me. He ate with efficient movements, nothing wasted. His focus never left me. The silence stretched heavy and unbearable until I could stand it no longer. You said my parents were killed, I said abruptly. Not lost. How do you know this? His voice was calm, but the tension in the air thickened. If my directness surprised him, he didn't show it. Because I was there the night they disappeared. He set down his fork, his expression hardening. Not at Ridge Run, but at the border meeting point where we'd arranged to speak. They never arrived. 3 days later, I found evidence of what happened. My heart hammered against my chest. What evidence? His eyes locked onto mine, assessing me as if weighing how much of the truth I could handle. Your father's ring, blood, signs of a struggle that had been hastily concealed. He paused, his gaze not leaving mine. I would have come for you then, but you'd already been hidden, moved from your family's dwelling to the common quarters, officially listed as an unrelated Omega, not the daughter of Bennett envoys. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. All those years believing I had been taken in out of pack duty, when in fact I had been deliberately separated from my identity. Why? I asked, my voice hoarse, the single word encompassing a universe of questions. Politics. Cale's voice hardened. Ridge Run's Alpha Dorian was losing control. The territory was struggling. Your parents had proposed an alliance between our pack's resource sharing joint hunting grounds, even exchange programs for young wolves to train in each territory's specialties. I frowned, trying to reconcile this with what I had been told. But Ridge Run always said Silvercrest was aggressive, expansionist. A bitter smile touched his lips. Easier to paint us as enemies than admit their own failures of leadership. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Dorian feared an alliance would expose his weaknesses. He preferred isolation and control over cooperation that could threaten his position. And my parents threatened that isolation. Yes, I whispered, understanding dawning, but they threatened more than that. Kale's eyes flickered down to the pendant at my throat, the one my mother had given me. Your mother sensed the potential bond between us years ago when you were still a child. She came to me in secret, asking that I wait until you were grown before approaching Ridge Run officially. The weight of her words hit me all at once, a dizzying wave of realization. You knew about me all this time. I knew you existed, he said, his voice softer than before, that you might be my fated mate. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a surprisingly human gesture of frustration. But after your parents vanished, you disappeared from official pack records. Eleanor had given you her pendant, my one way of finding you, but you never crossed our borders where I might sense it. The food between us went forgotten as the pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known existed began to fall into place. Until yesterday, Kyle continued, his voice steady but tinged with irony, when they practically delivered you to my doorstep, an irony that would be amusing if the situation wasn't so frustrating. His knuckles whitened around his cup. They thought they were trading away a useless omega, he muttered, his voice cold. Instead, they handed over the one person who could solidify an unbreakable alliance between our territories. The magnitude of it all, what I apparently was, what it meant, felt too overwhelming to fully comprehend. I pushed back from the table, needing space to breathe. It's too much. Kyle didn't try to stop me as I moved to the windows, pressing my palm against the cool glass. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. The garden below shimmered with raindrops that caught the morning light, each one sparkling like a tiny jewel. I understand, he said quietly. You've had your entire identity kept from you, only to have a stranger tell you that you're something else entirely. I turned to face him. I don't even know what a fated mate means. Not really. His expression softened just a little. It means different things to different pairs. He paused, his gaze intense, as if searching for the right words. At its core, it's a recognition at the deepest level. Soul to soul, wolf to wolf. A natural alignment that can't be manufactured or destroyed. His voice dropped lower, almost reverent. It doesn't remove choice, Rhea. It simply illuminates possibilities. Possibilities. I echoed the word, tasting strange on my tongue. After years of having no choices at all, the concept of possibilities felt almost threatening in its openness. He seemed to read my thoughts, his eyes softening. You need time. Space to rediscover who you are without Ridge Run's influence. I won't rush you. The unexpected consideration caught me off guard. I had prepared myself for demands for being claimed as property again, just by a different owner. But this offer of patience didn't fit my understanding of alphas, especially one as powerful as Kyle Vance. Thank you, I said, my voice quiet but genuine. He nodded and then shifted the conversation with deliberate lightness. Maya tells me you have healing abilities. We could use your skills in our infirmary if you're willing. Our current healer is skilled with trauma, but less so with illness. The return to practical matters was almost a relief. I'd like that. Healing it's the one thing I've always been sure of. Something like approval warmed his amber eyes. Then we'll start there, building a place for you that isn't defined by what others decided you should be. Just then, a knock on the door interrupted us, and Reich entered without waiting for permission. His presence spoke of long association, a familiarity that made the room feel smaller. "Forgive the intrusion," Reich said, though his expression suggested urgency. "We've received word from the northern outpost. There's been an attack." Kyle was on his feet instantly, all traces of the patient, almost gentle man vanishing beneath the mantle of leadership. "Casualties 2 injured. None dead," Reich replied quickly. "But the attackers left a message." His eyes flicked to me, then back to Kyle. "They're claiming Ridge Run territory was violated during last night's patrol." The implication hung in the air like a storm cloud. My former pack creating a pretense for conflict just hours after our transaction had been completed. "They're testing boundaries," Kyle said, his voice deceptively calm. "Seeing how we'll respond now that we have what they believe is merely a tradable Omega." He turned to me. "It seems your former Alpha suspects he may have miscalculated, though he can't possibly know how severely." "Or," Reich interjected, "they're creating a justification to demand your return." The thought of being sent back to Ridge Run, back to Jarek's calculating eyes, and Dorian's quiet disdain made my blood run cold. Back to being nothing. "That won't happen," Kale said firmly, his tone carrying an undeniable authority. "Rhea isn't a bargaining chip to be passed back and forth." He turned to Reich. "Prepare a formal response." "Diplomatic but firm," Kale continued. "We acknowledge no territorial violation, but offer a neutral meeting to discuss border clarifications." Reich nodded and left, and the silence that followed was thick with unspoken tension. "They'll come for me," I whispered, my chest tightening with the weight of the fear settling in. "Let them try." Kyle's words were soft, but the menace laced within them sent a chill down my spine. Kyle moved closer, not touching me, but near enough that his scent wintergreen stone and something wilder wrapped around me, stirring something deep inside. "You are under my protection now, Rhea Storm." His voice was low, unwavering. "No one will take you anywhere against your will again. Not even me." The words hit me with unexpected force, their intensity, and the subtle caveat catching me off guard. Not even me. He was acknowledging my autonomy, something I hadn't expected from an Alpha King. "I should see the injured," I said, seeking comfort in the practical. "If I'm to be your healer, let me begin now." A flicker of respect flashed in his amber eyes. "I'll have Sela show you to the infirmary." He hesitated before adding, "Be cautious. Not everyone will welcome the news of what you truly are. There are those in Silvercrest who have their own ambitions, their own ideas about who should stand beside the Alpha King." The warning sank in, adding another layer to the already complex situation I found myself in. I wasn't just a pawn between packs, I was potentially a target within my new refuge. "I've spent years being invisible," I said with more confidence than I felt. "I know how to navigate dangerous waters." The Silvercrest Infirmary was nothing like the cramped, ill-supplied room I'd worked in at Ridge Run. It was housed in a sleek modern wing of the main compound, filled with proper hospital beds and advanced medical equipment alongside traditional herbal remedies. The space was flooded with natural light from large windows. Sela introduced me to Dr. Thorne, the pack's primary physician, a human who knew what we were but kept our secrets. His gruff exterior couldn't quite hide his obvious relief at having a healer with my specific abilities join his team. "These two came in before dawn," he explained, leading me to a curtained-off area where the injured wolves lay. "They encountered what they're calling a hunting party on our northern border." I approached the first bed where a young man lay with his eyes closed, his breathing shallow, a bandage wrapped around his torso stained with seeping blood. The second bed held an older woman, her face ashen, her leg elevated and splinted. Bullet wound, Dr. Thorne said, nodding to the young man. Clean through missed vital organs, but he's lost a lot of blood. The female has a compound fracture. Silver-tipped arrow shattered the bone before they pulled it out. Silver poisonings, slowing the natural healing. I nodded, recognizing the symptoms. Silver was one of the few substances that could truly harm our kind, interfering with our accelerated healing and causing a toxic reaction similar to blood poisoning in humans. I'll need water, clean cloths, and my herbs if they've been brought from the vehicle. I slipped into the calm focus that always accompanied my healing work. Already here, Sela replied, pointing to a small bag on a nearby table. Dominic had them delivered to your room last night. Another unexpected consideration. I pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. I started with the woman whose condition seemed more critical. Sitting beside her bed, I placed my palms gently on either side of her damaged leg, closing my eyes to concentrate. Healing wasn't magic, it was more like communication, a dialogue between my energy and the injured body. My name is Ria, I said softly, speaking more for my own reassurance than for hers. I'm going to help with the silver poisoning first, then work on the bone. The woman's eyes fluttered open, pain clear in her gaze. New healer, she managed to say. From Ridge Run. Yes, I answered, though I didn't elaborate further. I was already sinking into the meditative state required for my work. I envisioned the silver particles in her system, tiny invaders disrupting her natural healing. With practiced concentration, I directed my energy to isolate them, pulling them toward the surface of her skin where they could be expelled. Minutes passed in deep focus. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I worked the familiar drain of energy, a small price for the results. Slowly, silvery beads began to form on the surface of her skin, the metal being drawn out through her pores. Thorne watched with open curiosity, gently dabbing the expelled silver with cloth soaked in a cleansing solution. Remarkable, he murmured. I've read about this ability but never witnessed it firsthand. Once the silver was removed, repairing the bone would be easier. Still, it required precision and strength. I wasn't sure I had not after yesterday's exhausting journey and emotional turmoil, but I pushed forward anyway, visualizing the shattered bone knitting itself back together, urging her body's natural healing to speed up. By the time I finished with both patients, nearly 3 hours had passed. I sank back, fatigue crashing over me in waves. Sela appeared at my side, offering water and a protein bar. Her expression was concerned. "You're as pale as a ghost," she said. "You should have taken breaks." I accepted the water gratefully. "They needed immediate attention," I replied. "The silver poisoning would have spread." Nevertheless, came a deep voice from behind us. "You need to recognize your own limits." I turned to see Kyle standing in the doorway, his powerful presence filling the space. How long had he been watching the patients? He asked, moving closer. "They'll recover." I stood up only to find my legs embarrassingly unsteady. The silver's been removed and the wounds are healing normally now. They should rest today, but by tomorrow they'll be much improved. Kyle nodded satisfaction, flickering in his expression. But his gaze didn't leave me, noting the tremor in my hands and the exhaustion I couldn't quite hide. "You've done enough for now," he said, his tone brooking no argument. "It's an order." He added the words, clear and firm. Sela nodded and Kyle turned to Dr. Thorne. "Full report on my desk within the hour." The doctor gave a respectful nod. "Of course, Alpha." I wanted to protest, to insist I could continue, but my body betrayed me. The room seemed to tilt dangerously. Strong hands gripped my elbow, steadying me. I looked up, startled, to find Kyle much closer than before. Concern was etched into his features. "You pushed too hard," he said quietly. "I needed to prove my worth," I admitted before I could stop myself. Something like pain flashed across his face. "Not at the cost of your health." His hands lingered just a moment longer than necessary before he stepped back. "Rest. That's an order." Despite his commanding tone, I could feel the genuine concern beneath it, and that was more disorienting than anything. In Ridge Run, my healing ability had been nothing more than a resource to be exploited, not a gift to be protected. Sela helped me back to my room, where I collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Sleep overtook me instantly, pulling me into dreams filled with silver mist and golden eyes. I awoke to late afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, a strange feeling of being watched. Sitting up quickly, I was startled to find a young girl perched in a chair near the bed, watching me with open curiosity. She couldn't have been more than 12, with a wild tangle of dark curls and eyes that seemed far too old for her young face. "Hello," I said cautiously. "You sleep with your mouth open," she informed me matter-of-factly. "And you talk sometimes," she added as if it was a well-known fact. I pushed some hair out of my face, trying to clear my foggy thoughts. "I'm sorry." "Who are you?" "Lily," she said simply. "Dominic's sister." That grabbed my full attention. None of the whispered stories about Kyle Vance had mentioned a sister, especially not one so young. The age gap between them must be significant. "I see," I said, though I didn't. "Not really." "And you're in my room because Dom asked me to bring you food." She gestured toward a covered tray on the bedside table. "But you were sleeping so hard I decided to wait," she added, her head tilting as she studied me with unnerving intensity. "You're different than I expected." "Different how?" "Softer, but not weak." She said, her voice like she was solving a puzzle. "The others think you're just an Omega from Ridge Run, but you're not, are you?" My conversation with Kyle hadn't seemed private enough to be common knowledge. "What makes you say that?" Lily shrugged. "Dom doesn't assign personal quarters in the East Wing to random Omegas, and he doesn't check on patients in the infirmary unless they're pack leaders or family." Her gaze dropped to my pendant. "Plus, you're wearing our symbol." I touched the moonstone reflexively, feeling its warmth against my skin. "Your symbol?" Lily asked casually, as though it should be obvious. "The stone from the sacred pools." She added, "Only pack leaders and their mates wear moonstone from our territory. It's tradition." The casual confirmation of what Kyle had claimed sent a tremor through me. This child had just verified a key piece of his story without even being asked. "You should eat," Lily continued, apparently satisfied with whatever she'd been trying to figure out. "Dom gets grumpy when people ignore his instructions. And he specifically said you needed protein after healing." I couldn't help but smile at her blunt take on the intimidating Alpha King. I reached for the tray, suddenly aware of how hungry I was. Beneath the cover was a hearty meal: roast chicken, vegetables, fresh bread, and what smelled like apple tart for dessert. "Did you heal Kira and Zane?" Lily asked as I ate. "The patrol guards who got hurt." I nodded. "They should be recovering well now." "Everyone's talking about it," she added. "Dr. Thorne told Kyle you've pulled the silver straight through the skin. He said it was the most advanced healing he'd seen in 30 years of working with our kind." I shifted uncomfortably at the praise. "It's just something my mother taught me." "Your mother was a Bennett," Lily said, her voice matter-of-fact. "They were diplomats." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "How do you know that?" "I listen when adults think I'm not paying attention." She grinned, revealing a missing tooth that somehow made her seem even younger, despite her serious manner. "Also, I was there when Kel found their personal effects after they disappeared." He was really angry. Scary angry. A chill ran down my spine. "You saw what happened to my parents?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her expression sobered. "Not exactly. I saw what came after. Kale came back with their things: your mom's journal, your dad's ceremonial dagger. There was blood." She hesitated before continuing, her voice dropping. "He tried to go back for you, but Ridge Run closed their borders. Said there was an outbreak of some human illness, and no one could enter or leave." Another piece of the puzzle. Another confirmation of Kale's version of events. The knot of anger that had been growing in my chest since yesterday tightened even more. My whole life had been built on deliberate lies. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked softly. Lily considered the question with surprising seriousness. "Because Kyle needs someone who makes him less alone." She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "He thinks being Alpha King means he has to carry everything by himself. But even kings need someone to talk to when the crown gets heavy." The insight was startling coming from someone so young. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door, followed by Selah's entrance. She raised an eyebrow at Lily. "Causing trouble again, little shadow." Lily grinned, unrepentant. "Just making friends," she replied, hopping up from her chair. "Bye, Rhea. I'll see you at dinner." After she bounded out, Selah shook her head fondly. "Lily has a habit of adopting newcomers. I hope she didn't overwhelm you." "No," I said truthfully. She was illuminating. "Well, if you're feeling recovered enough, Kale's requested your presence in his study. There's been a development regarding Ridge Run." Anxiety flared in my chest. "What kind of development?" "They formally requested your return," Selah said, her expression serious. "They're claiming you were incorrectly classified in the trade agreement and therefore not legitimately transferred." The room seemed to drop in temperature. "And what did Kale say?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A slow smile spread across Selah's face. "He said they're welcome to present their case at tomorrow's full moon gathering, where he'll be announcing his mate bond to the entire pack." My heart lurched. "He's what?" Selah looked uncertain for a moment. "He didn't tell you. The announcement is set for tomorrow night's ceremony. All neighboring packs have been invited, including Ridge Run." She hesitated before adding, "I assumed you knew." I set down my fork, my appetite vanishing in an instant. Making a public declaration would change everything, transforming me overnight from a traded Omega to the potential Luna of the most powerful pack in the region. The political implications alone were staggering. "I need to speak with him," I said, rising from the bed with more steadiness than I'd had earlier. "That's why he sent for you," Selah replied, a knowing look in her eyes. "Come on." Selah led the way through unfamiliar corridors, the soft click of our footsteps echoing in the silence. As we passed pack members, I could feel their eyes on me, curiosity thick in the air. News was spreading fast, and by tomorrow, everyone would know exactly who and what I was supposed to be. The question that hammered in my mind with each step was simpler. Was I ready to become the person Kale claimed I was born to be? Or was I still the shadow-dwelling Omega that Ridge Run had shaped me into? Kale's study occupied a corner of this main building, with windows that overlooked both the central courtyard and the distant mountains. The space reflected its owner, powerful yet not ostentatious, with shelves of books, maps spread across a large desk, and a cozy seating area near the fireplace. He stood with his back to the door as we entered, silhouetted against the fading afternoon light. "Leave us, Selah," he said without turning. She squeezed my hand briefly before departing, the door closing softly behind her, sealing me in with Kyle. I didn't waste a moment. "You're going to announce our supposed bond," I said, my voice firm, not waiting for me to speak first, without consulting me. He turned, then, his expression carefully neutral. "Not supposed, Rhea. Real." He gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." I remained standing. "You promised me time." "Things have changed." His voice remained calm, but the tension in his posture was undeniable. "Ridge Run is maneuvering. If we don't establish your position clearly, they'll continue trying to reclaim you. So I'm still just a piece on a territorial chessboard." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Kale moved toward me, then closing the distance between us with deliberate steps, until he stood so close I had to tilt my head to maintain eye contact. "No," he said, his voice low and firm. "You are the woman who could end generations of conflict between our packs. The one person whose existence proves cooperation is possible. Or, I countered, my voice barely above a whisper, I'm the perfect excuse for more bloodshed when Ridge Run decides I've been stolen, not traded. A muscle twitched in Cale's jaw as he considered my words. You're right, he admitted finally. This could go either way. Peace or war will depend on how we handle the next few days. His acknowledgement surprised me. I'd expected insistence, maybe even the kind of alpha command that could bend lesser wolves to his will. But he'd conceded my point. So why rush the announcement? I asked, my tone softening. Why not wait until we understand what we are to each other? Cale moved to the window, his gaze sweeping over the mountains bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Because waiting gives Dorian time to build his case, he said, his voice steady, to spread rumors that I've taken you against pack law. His shoulders tensed. And because the bond between us grows stronger each day, you feel it too, whether you acknowledge it or not. I couldn't deny it. Even now, standing across the room from him, I felt the pull of his presence, like gravity drawing me in. Since crossing into Silvercrest territory, something inside me had awakened, a recognition that went beyond logic or rational thought. I barely know you, I said, my protest sounding weak even to my own ears. Cale turned to face me, his amber eyes catching the last traces of sunlight. Then know this, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I've spent 3 years searching for you, Rhea Storm, not because of politics or power, but because from the moment your mother described you, I knew you were the missing piece of my soul. His voice deepened, and the raw honesty in his words stole my breath. This wasn't the calculated speech of a political leader. It was something far more primal, more personal. And if I'm not ready, I whispered, then we announce the potential bond only, he replied, his eyes never leaving mine. The recognition, not the completion. He moved toward me, slowly as one might approach a wounded animal. But we must establish your position here. Your protection depends on it. I sank into the chair he'd offered earlier, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. What would this announcement mean for us? For me, Cale took the seat opposite mine, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. The position should have diminished his imposing presence, but instead it created an intimacy that was equally disarming. It would mean acknowledging publicly that we recognize each other as fated mates, he explained. It would establish your position as my equal, not as property transferred in a territorial agreement. His expression darkened. It would also make you a target for those who oppose me both within and outside our borders. Like Ridge Run, I said, already knowing the answer. Yes. There are others who would prefer Silvercrest remain isolated, who resist the union of packs that our bond could create. Cale continued, his tone heavy with the weight of the truth. I thought of Nara's words earlier about Cale carrying the burden of leadership alone, about the weight of the crown. I was beginning to understand that the power Cale held came with responsibilities far beyond what I'd ever imagined, and dangers I hadn't even considered. And if I refuse, I asked, needing to know all my options. His gaze never wavered. Then I'll continue to protect you as a valued member of Silvercrest, but without the full authority that mate status would provide. It would be more difficult. But I meant what I said, Rhea. I won't force this bond, even if refusing it leaves us both unfulfilled. The magnitude of the choice hit me all at once. In less than 2 days, I'd gone from being a disposable Omega to a potential Luna, from healer to political symbol. It was too much, too fast. And yet some part of me responded to the call of destiny Cale had described. I need air, I said, abruptly standing. I need to think. To my surprise, Cale nodded. The garden below is private. There's a path that leads to a small clearing with a pool. It's peaceful there. I understood his gesture for what it was, trust offering me space when he could have insisted I stay where he could protect me. Thank you. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. Rhea, he called. I turned to find him standing, the weight of both power and vulnerability in his posture. Whatever you decide, know that you have a place here. Not because of what you might be to me, but because of who you are. His words followed me like a warm current as I made my way through the compound and into the garden he'd mentioned. True to his word, a narrow path wound between flowering shrubs and ancient trees, eventually opening to a small clearing where a natural pool reflected the evening sky. The water shimmered with a soft luminescence almost magical in the fading light of dusk. I knelt at the edge, trailing my fingers through the cool water. The same distinctive blue shimmer from my pendant radiated from beneath the surface, moonstone in its natural state. This then was one of the sacred pools Lily had spoken of. Beautiful, isn't it? I startled, turning to find the sharp-featured woman I had glimpsed the day before, standing at the edge of the clearing. Unlike Sela's warm openness or Nara's curious enthusiasm, this woman's expression was calculating as she studied me. Yes, I replied, rising to my feet. I'm sorry I didn't realize anyone else was here. Clearly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm Selena. Silvercrest Spada. Her words were clipped. And you're Rhea Storm, the healer from Ridge Run. The slight pause in her voice suggested she knew exactly who I really was. That's right. I stood tall, unwilling to let her intimidation unsettle me. Selena moved closer, her steps graceful but lacking the effortless power Kael held. This was practiced elegance designed to intimidate. You've caused quite a stir in just one day, she said, her voice laced with cold judgment. Healing silver poisoning, capturing our alpha's attention, receiving quarters in the East Wing. Her gaze fell to my pendant. And wearing sacred stone around your neck like you have the right. The hostility in her words was unmistakable. Here I thought was one of those Kael had warned me about, someone with their own agenda for who should stand beside the Alpha King. I straightened my spine, not about to be cowed. The pendant was my mother's. Yes, Eleanor Storm. I remember her. Selena circled me slowly, her eyes sharp. Idealistic. Naive. Believing Pax could overcome centuries of territorial instinct through diplomatic talks. Her laugh was soft but cutting. Look where that got her. Anger flared hot in my chest. You knew my mother? I knew of her, just as I know of you. She stopped directly before me, her eyes narrowing as she took in my expression. The supposed fated mate appearing at exactly the moment Kael needs a political advantage against Ridge Run. Convenient, isn't it? The insinuation was clear. She was accusing Kael of using me, of fabricating a mate bond for strategic purposes. It struck at my deepest insecurity that all of this, all of me, was part of some elaborate manipulation. I don't know what you're implying, I said carefully, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. But I have no interest in politics. I'm just trying to find my place here. Your place, she repeated, her voice almost pitying. Let's be clear, little Omega, Selena repeated, venom dripping from her words. Your place is wherever the Alpha decides to put you. For now, that might be at his side, playing the role of the long-lost mate. But roles change when they're no longer useful. She reached out suddenly, her fingers grazing my pendant. I flinched as the stone flared hot against my skin. It didn't react with the warming recognition it had shown Kael, but with what felt like a warning. Selena quickly withdrew her hand, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before her mask of cool disdain returned. Interesting, she murmured, her voice cool and calculating. Perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye. But ask yourself this, she continued, stepping closer, her voice low and dangerous. Even if the mate bond is real, are you ready for what it means to stand beside a king? To face those who would destroy everything he's built? Before I could respond, a low growl rumbled from the path behind us. We both turned to see Nara standing there, her small form practically vibrating with protective fury. Leave her alone, Selena, Nara demanded, her voice carrying a surprising authority for someone so young. Selena's expression shifted to one of practiced affection. Little Shadow, I was just introducing myself to our new guest. Liar? Nara spat, her tone fierce. I heard you, she added. Dom said you're not supposed to be alone with her. A dangerous flash crossed Selena's eyes before she masked it, her voice calm but edged with menace. Your brother worries too much. I was simply providing our new healer with some historical context. She turned back to me, her smile brittle. We'll continue our conversation another time, Rhea. With that, she departed, walking away with deliberate steps, disappearing down the path toward the main compound. As soon as she was gone, Nara rushed to my side. Are you okay? Did she hurt you? Her eyes were wide with concern. I'm fine, I reassured her, though my heart still raced from the confrontation. She just wanted to talk. Nara scowled, the fire in her gaze unrelenting. Selena doesn't just talk to anyone. She's been trying to become Luna forever. When Dom didn't choose her, she started saying she was waiting for his true mate to appear. Nara's expression darkened. She didn't expect it to actually happen. The pieces clicked into place. She thought she'd eventually wear him down, I said. Exactly, Nara agreed. But now you're here and the pendant reacts to Dom, and Selena's whole plan is ruined. She grabbed my hand, tugging me gently. Come on. We should tell Dom what happened. I hesitated, still processing the encounter. Nara, do you believe I'm really your brother's mate? She looked at me, her eyes old with wisdom beyond her years. The pendant doesn't lie, and Dom hasn't smiled like he does around you since before our parents died. She tugged on my hand again, her voice pleading. Please, he needs to know Selena threatened you. She didn't exactly threaten me, I protested, though the warning had been clear enough. She will, Nara said with complete certainty. Selena doesn't give up what she wants, and she's wanted to be Luna for a very long time. I allowed Nara to lead me back toward the compound, my mind racing. Selena's hostility had clarified something for me. The dangers Kale had mentioned weren't abstract concepts. There were those who would actively work against any bond between us, who would prefer I disappear like my parents had. The realization hardened something deep inside me. Ridge Run had spent years teaching me to be invisible, to accept whatever scraps of existence they deigned to offer. I'd survived by making myself small, unthreatening, useful, but forgettable. That version of Rhea, the shadow-dwelling, head-down Omega, wouldn't survive in this new world of power plays and political maneuvering. And perhaps she shouldn't. My mother's words echoed in my mind. Still waters run deep. Maybe it was time to see just how deep my waters really went. Kyle was waiting for us in the entrance hall when we returned, his posture alert, like he already sensed the urgency we carried. His eyes moved over me quickly, searching for any sign of harm. Nara cornered her at the sacred pool, she said before I could speak. She was being threatening. Kale's expression darkened, but his voice remained calm as he turned to his sister. Thank you for bringing Rhea back safely. Would you give us a moment? Nara hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave what promised to be an important conversation. Fine, she said, but I'll be right over there. She pointed to a window seat across the hall as she moved away. Kyle turned to me, his eyes softening. Are you all right? Yes, I answered honestly. Selena was testing boundaries, seeing what I'm made of. And what did she discover? Kale asked, his voice low, but with a hint of concern. I met his gaze directly, that I'm not as easy to intimidate as she hoped. I touched the pendant at my throat. It reacted to her touch. Not like it does with you, though. It felt like a warning. Surprise flickered across Kyle's face. The stone responded defensively. Yes, it burned her, I think. His expression shifted. Was it satisfaction? Pride? I couldn't quite read it, But there was something there. The sacred stone recognizes threats as well as bonds. Kale said, his jaw tightening. I'll speak with Selena. No. I said, my voice steady, the decision solidifying as I spoke. Let her believe she's planted seeds of doubt. Let her think I'm uncertain. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Because tomorrow night I'm going to stand beside you for the announcement. Kyle's eyes widened slightly. You're certain? Not about everything, I admitted. I still need time to understand what this bond truly means for us, but I am certain about one thing. I straightened my shoulders, the decision hardening in me. I won't be used as a pawn again. Not by Ridge Run. Not by Selena. Not by anyone. If I'm truly meant to be Luna of Silvercrest. I continued, my voice unwavering. Then let's begin, as we mean to continue. Together, facing whatever comes.